Picture this. It is the year 1206, the Mongolian steppe. A cold wind cuts across miles of empty grassland, and in the center of a massive gathering of warriors, horses, and tribal flags, a single man stands before tens of thousands of soldiers and makes a declaration that no ruler in history had ever made before. He tells them, "Your blood doesn't determine your rank. Your birth doesn't decide your future. From this moment forward, only what you do matters." The man speaking is Genghis Khan, and in that single moment, he didn't just reorganize an army, he rewired the psychological operating system of an entire civilization. Within 20 years of that declaration, those soldiers, men who had been nomadic herdsmen, former slaves, captured enemies, and borderline starving tribespeople, would conquer more land than the Roman Empire. They would defeat armies 10 times their size. They would bring down civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. They would ride through Persia, through China, through Russia, through Eastern Europe, and they would do it without ever once having a major mutiny, without a significant internal betrayal, without their ranks collapsing under pressure. Every general in history has faced the same fundamental problem. You can force men to march, you can force men to hold a line, but you cannot force men to believe. And it is belief, not weapons, not numbers, not tactics, that decides every war ever fought. Genghis Khan solved this problem in a way that no military commander before or since has ever replicated. And what I'm going to show you today is not just ancient history. What I'm going to show you is a psychological architecture so sophisticated, so deeply rooted in human nature, that the moment you understand it, you will never look at loyalty, power, or human relationships the same way again. Stay until the very end, because there is something in the final section of this video, a truth about what destroyed this system, that most people will find deeply uncomfortable, because it applies to their own lives right now, today. Let's begin. To understand how Genghis Khan engineered loyalty, you have to first understand the world that engineered him. He was born somewhere around 1162, in the Khenti Mountains of what is now Mongolia. His name at birth was Temujin, and the world he was born into was, by any modern standard, a psychological horror show. The Mongolian steppe in the 12th century was not a civilization. It was a permanent state of war dressed up as a society. Dozens of rival tribes, the Merkits, the Tatars, the Naimans, the Karats, the Jadaran, existed in a constant cycle of raid, revenge, alliance, and betrayal. There was no overarching law. There was no neutral authority. There was no concept of permanent loyalty. Alliances were formed when useful and broken when inconvenient. Men swore blood oaths in the morning and broke them by nightfall. Power was inherited, not earned. If your father was a chief, you were important. If your father died, you were nothing. And nothing on the steppe meant exactly that. Temujin was 9 years old when his father, Yasuge, was poisoned by the Tatars, a rival tribe who had every reason to want the son of a minor Mongol chieftain dead before he could grow up and seek revenge. His father's clan, men who had sworn loyalty to his family, who had eaten at their fires and called themselves brothers, immediately abandoned the widow and her children, left them on the open steppe in winter, with nothing. Let that sit for a moment. The men who had pledged their lives to his father walked away from his children without looking back. Because in the tribal loyalty system of the Mongols, loyalty was transactional. When the man who gave you value was gone, the loyalty was gone with him. Temujin grew up watching his mother forage for food, wild berries, roots, anything she could find. He watched his brothers nearly starve. He understood, at the cellular level, what it felt like to be abandoned by people who had promised to protect you. At 16, he was kidnapped by the Merkits and forced to wear a kang, a heavy wooden collar worn by slaves. He was humiliated, imprisoned, and reduced to the lowest possible status a human being on the steppe could occupy. He escaped. We don't know exactly how. The sources are unclear. But what we do know is what happened immediately after. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He started building. He reached out to Togrul, the Khan of the Karats, a man who had once been his father's blood brother, and reminded him of that old bond. He reached out to Jamuka, his childhood friend, and reactivated their Anda oath. He gathered around him a tiny band of men, most of them outcasts, dispossessed, failed warriors from broken families, and he began. And in those early days of building, Temujin made decisions that seem almost irrational. decisions that flew in the face of every established rule of the steppe, decisions that only make sense once you understand the psychology behind them. When one of his horses was stolen and a young man named Bogotshu helped him track it down and recover it, without being asked, without expecting reward, Temujin offered him a share of the horses. Bogotshu refused payment. He said he helped because he wanted to. Temujin made him one of his first commanders, when a soldier named Jelme, whose father had once given a small gift to Temujin's family years before, came to join him. Temujin received him as if he were receiving a general, not a recruit. He remembered. In a world where no one remembered small debts, Temujin remembered everything. This is the first secret, and it sounds simple, but its psychological impact was devastating. By 1206, Temujin had united every Mongol tribe under one banner. He was given the title Genghis Khan, meaning roughly universal ruler. And now he faced the question that every leader who has ever built power must eventually answer. How do you keep it? Military conquest is a technical problem. You study terrain, you study your enemy, you move faster, you hit harder. Tactics can be learned, but loyalty, genuine loyalty, is a human problem, and human problems require human solutions. Genghis Khan solved it with 3 pillars, not instinctively, deliberately. Pillar 1, merit over blood, destroying the old hierarchy. The most revolutionary thing Genghis Khan ever did was not military, it was structural. In every civilization that existed in his time, Chinese dynasties, Islamic caliphates, European feudal kingdoms, Persian empires, rank was inherited. You were born into your position. A peasant could not become a general regardless of his brilliance. A slave could not earn command regardless of his courage. The hierarchy was fixed, permanent, and protected by every social institution that existed. This system had one catastrophic psychological flaw. It guaranteed that the people at the top were there because of their birth, not their ability. And it guaranteed that the most talented people in the society, the ones born at the bottom, had no reason to give everything they had, because giving everything they had changed nothing. Their ceiling was fixed. Genghis Khan ripped this ceiling out entirely. He declared that rank in his system would be determined by one thing only: demonstrated value. It didn't matter what tribe you came from. It didn't matter who your father was. It didn't matter whether you had been a slave yesterday. What mattered was what you could do today. The psychological impact of this was extraordinary, because the moment you make effort meaningful, genuinely, provably meaningful, you transform the psychology of every single person in your organization. They are no longer working within a system that has already decided their value. They are working within a system that is watching them, evaluating them, and ready to reward them. This is not ancient philosophy. This is core behavioral psychology. The single greatest predictor of human motivation is the belief that your effort produces outcomes. Remove that belief, and people coast. Install that belief, and people give everything they have. And Genghis Khan didn't just declare this as policy. He proved it repeatedly with dramatic public examples that every soldier could see and verify for themselves. Subutai was a blacksmith's son. No noble blood, no family name. In any other system, he would have lived and died a craftsman. Under Genghis Khan's system, he became perhaps the greatest military strategist of the medieval world. He never lost a major battle. He planned and executed campaigns across thousands of miles simultaneously, defeating armies in Russia, Hungary, China, and Persia. His promotions were visible. His rewards were public. Every soldier in the Mongol army knew his story. And every soldier who knew his story understood, if I am good enough, that could be me. That understanding is worth more than any salary, more than any title, more than any threat of punishment. It is the psychological fuel that makes human beings burn past their own perceived limits. Pillar 2. The Brotherhood of Shared Suffering. Here is something that modern leadership theory rediscovered in the 20th century, and still gets mostly wrong. Shared suffering creates deeper loyalty than shared reward. When human beings endure hardship together, real hardship, physical and psychological, neurobiological processes activate that are among the deepest bonding mechanisms in the human brain. These are the same systems that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to bind hunter-gatherer tribes together, older than language, older than culture. They operate below the level of conscious thought, Genghis Khan did not read neuroscience, but he understood this principle at an intuitive level that most modern leaders never reach. During campaigns, Genghis Khan and his senior generals ate the same food as their soldiers. They slept in the same conditions. They endured the same cold, the same thirst, the same exhaustion. There were no separate command tents with better food and warmer beds. When the army marched for 3 days without water, the generals marched without water. This was not symbolic gesture. This was a calculated psychological strategy, because every soldier who watched his general suffering beside him experienced something powerful: the dissolution of hierarchy at the human level. The general was still the general. His authority was absolute. But he was also a man, in the mud, in the cold, doing what needed to be done alongside his brothers. And in that shared suffering, bonds formed that no contract could manufacture. Men who might have sold their loyalty to the highest bidder instead felt something they couldn't explain or articulate but couldn't deny. These are my people. I belong here. I will not leave. But Genghis Khan went further. He formalized this principle into the structure of the army itself. He organized every 10 soldiers into a permanent unit called an arban. These 10 men ate together, slept together, trained together, and fought together indefinitely. They were not rotated. They were not reassigned. Over months and years of campaign, these 10 men became something closer to family than to colleagues. And then he introduced the most psychologically devastating rule of the entire system. If one man in an arban deserted in battle, all 10 were held accountable. Think about what this does to the individual psychology of each soldier. His decision to stand or run is no longer just about himself. It is about the 9 brothers standing beside him. Men whose faces he knows, men whose children's names he knows, men who have shared his food and his cold and his fear for years. No ideology, no patriotism, no threat of punishment is more powerful than the refusal to betray the specific human being standing next to you. This is not theory. This is how human beings actually work. And Genghis Khan engineered it on a mass scale. Pillar 3, radical transparency, the psychology of fair systems. The third pillar is the one that most modern leaders understand intellectually but almost never actually execute. Genghis Khan's great law, the yasa, established a code of behavior that applied to everyone equally. Not mostly everyone. Not everyone except the powerful. Everyone. A general who violated the yasa faced the same punishment as a foot soldier who violated it. A member of Genghis Khan's own family who broke the law faced the same consequence as a stranger. There were no exceptions, and everyone knew it. But what truly made this system psychologically powerful was not the punishment side. It was the reward side. Every significant reward was given publicly, in front of the army, with explanation. When a soldier performed an act of exceptional courage or intelligence, the recognition was not a private memo or a quiet promotion. It was a public ceremony. The deed was named. The man was named. The reward was specified and delivered in view of thousands. This transparency served a function that goes far deeper than simple fairness. It answered the question that every human being in every organization is perpetually, and often unconsciously, asking, does what I do actually matter here? In most human systems, ancient and modern, the answer to that question is unclear. Promotions happen for political reasons. Punishments fall inconsistently. The criteria for advancement are unspoken and shifting. And in that uncertainty, human psychology does something predictable. It gives up trying to optimize for performance and starts trying to optimize for politics instead. It starts managing upward. It starts protecting itself. It stops believing that effort produces outcomes. The moment that happens, you have lost your people, are still present. Their loyalty is already gone. Genghis Khan's system made the rules visible, consistent, and real. And visible, consistent, real systems produce something extraordinarily rare in human organizations: genuine trust. Not the trust of a man who has no other options. The trust of a man who has seen the system work, has seen it punish power and rewardability, has personally experienced its fairness, and has decided that this is a system worth giving himself to. Now we go beneath the surface, because what I've described so far is the visible architecture. What I'm about to describe is the invisible psychology operating underneath it, the mechanisms that turned all of this from policy into genuine human devotion. The converted enemy, The most loyal follower you can build here is a fact that the history books record but almost never examine. A disproportionate number of Genghis Khan's most effective, most loyal commanders were former enemies. Jebei, one of his greatest generals, had shot an arrow that nearly killed Genghis Khan in battle. When Jebei was captured, being executed, he was asked a simple question: "Why did you fight so hard?" Jebei answered honestly, "Because I was loyal to my chief." And Genghis Khan smiled, because that was exactly the answer he was looking for. He gave Jebei a command. Not immediately, he was tested first, proven first. But eventually, a man who had tried to kill him became one of the architects of his empire. Subutai's earliest military service was against Mongol forces. He too was absorbed. He too became one of the greatest generals in world history. This was not accidental mercy. This was a calculated psychological strategy based on a profound understanding of human nature. The most loyal follower you can have is a person who has experienced the alternative and chosen you anyway. A man who grows up in your system, who has never known anything else. His loyalty is untested. He has no basis for comparison. He doesn't know what he's committed to, because he has never seen what commitment to something else looks like. But a man who fought against you, who was defeated, who then entered your system and experienced its fairness, its merit, its brotherhood, that man's loyalty is informed. He is not with you because he was born into it. He is with you because he compared, he evaluated, he chose. Informed loyalty is unshakable, because it is not blind faith. It is reasoned conviction, and reasoned conviction survives pressure that blind faith shatters under. Genghis Khan weaponized this principle on a civilizational scale. Every conquered people was offered the same choice: join the system, operate under its rules, and be treated as part of the empire. Resist and be destroyed. Cities that submitted were integrated, protected, and allowed to keep their religions, their cultures, and their local leadership structures. Cities that resisted were erased from history. And then, and this is the part most people miss, the survivors of those destroyed cities were sent ahead of the Mongol army to spread the story. Not as prisoners, as messengers, walking psychological weapons whose testimony reached the next target before the army did. This is psychological warfare at a scale that no modern military has fully replicated. The actual violence was calculated and limited. The perception of total violence was manufactured and broadcast deliberately. How Genghis kept men mentally hooked. Every great loyalty system has a quality that most people can't name, but everyone can feel. It keeps you psychologically engaged even when you're not actively doing anything. It occupies your mental space. It gives you something to think about, to plan for, to anticipate. Genghis Khan's system did this through a mechanism of perpetual advancement. There was always a next rank, always a next campaign, always a next challenge. The system was never static. And human beings, who are biologically wired for forward movement, for progress, for the next horizon, cannot stay loyal to a system that has nothing to offer them tomorrow. He also used something that modern storytellers and psychologists call the open loop, a promise of resolution that is deliberately delayed. In every campaign, he seeded his soldiers with a sense of something coming, a city that held legendary wealth, an enemy that had wronged the Mongol people, a destiny that was being fulfilled. These narratives created forward momentum. They made the present hardship meaningful by connecting it to a future reward that felt both specific and inevitable. Men who believe their suffering is building towards something will endure extraordinary hardship. Men who suffer without narrative, without meaning, break quickly. The suffering is identical. The story makes all the difference. The fear architecture, punishment as theta. I want to be direct about something that the more comfortable tellings of this story leave out. Genghis Khan was not kind. The loyalty system was not built on love alone, and any honest examination of how it actually worked must acknowledge the other force operating within it, fear. But here is the sophistication, and this is what separates Genghis Khan from every brutal tyrant who simply killed people and wondered why his empire fell apart. The fear was architected. It was not random. It was not personal. It was not unpredictable. The punishments in the yasa were severe and certain, but they were also consistent. If you stole from a fellow soldier, you died. If you abandoned your arban in battle, you died. But if you had done nothing wrong, you had nothing to fear. The punishment was a dark wall at the edge of a safe space, not a random storm that could hit anyone at any moment. Unpredictable punishment destroys loyalty. Consistent, predictable punishment, applied equally to everyone, actually reinforces loyalty because it clarifies the system. It makes the safe behavior obvious, and it demonstrates once again that the rules are real. When Genghis Khan executed his own generals for violations of the yasa, and he did multiple times, the effect on the army was not fear of him. It was confirmation of the system. The law was real. No one was above it. That confirmation was itself a source of loyalty, because it proved that the fairness that had been promised was actually delivered. This is the full architecture. Reward the right behavior publicly, punish the wrong behavior consistently, and apply both equally regardless of rank. When all three operate together, you create a system that human beings genuinely trust, and humans will sacrifice enormously for systems they genuinely trust. Genghis Khan died in August 1227. The cause is debated: injury, illness, exhaustion. He was somewhere between 60 and 70 years old. He had spent the last 50 years of his life building the largest contiguous land empire in human history, and within 50 years of his death, that empire had split into 4 warring factions. Within 100 years, the Mongol Empire had effectively ceased to exist as a unified force. The greatest loyalty system in history, the system that had held together men from hundreds of different tribes, cultures, and languages across millions of square miles, collapsed. Why? The answer is important, because it is the answer to a question that applies to every organization, every relationship, every system of loyalty that has ever been built. The structures mentioned. The arban system continued. The yasa was still enforced. The titles, the ranks, the formal rewards, all of it was preserved. The successors of Genghis Khan kept every visible component of the system intact. What they could not preserve was the invisible component, the psychological intelligence that had animated the system, the genuine understanding of human nature that had made every rule meaningful rather than mechanical. His sons, Jochi, Chagatai, Urgade, Tului, were powerful men. Some of them were capable rulers, but none of them understood the system the way their father had understood it. They knew the rules, but not the reasons. They enforced the structures, but couldn't feel when the structures were failing. Gradually, merit promotions became political promotions. The brotherhood of shared suffering became the ceremony of separated privilege. Commanders living better than soldiers again, eating better, sleeping warmer, demanding more and offering less. The radical transparency of reward and punishment became opaque. Some violations punished, some ignored, depending on who you knew and whose favor you had. And as each element eroded, slowly, almost invisibly, something happened in the psychology of the men inside the system. The question that the system had answered so powerfully, does my effort actually matter here, stopped having a clear answer. And when that question loses its answer, loyalty begins to drain. Not in a single dramatic moment of betrayal. Quietly, daily, one small disillusionment at a time, until the day comes when the men who were once willing to ride into death for the cause discover that they are now just doing enough to survive the day. That is how loyalty systems die, not from betrayal, from disconnection. 700 years later, you are sitting wherever you are, watching this video, and I want you to do something uncomfortable for a moment. I want you to look at the loyalty systems you are inside of right now. Your workplace, your relationships, your social circles, the communities you have given your time and belief to. Ask yourself, honestly, the questions that Genghis Khan's system answers so precisely. Does your effort actually determine your outcome in these systems? Or is there a hidden hierarchy that no amount of performance can penetrate? Are the rules applied equally to everyone? Or do they bend for the powerful and break for the weak? Do the people who lead these systems suffer alongside you? Or have they separated themselves into comfort while asking you to sacrifice? Are you rewarded publicly when you do something right, or is your contribution absorbed silently into someone else's recognition? And then, perhaps most importantly, ask yourself this: do you know with clarity what you are building toward? Is there a story? Is there a horizon? Is there a reason that the present difficulty is worth enduring? Because if the answer to these questions is no, then the system you are loyal to is not worthy of your loyalty. It is extracting your commitment without earning it. And the longer you stay inside it, the more of yourself you will give away to something that will never give back. Genghis Khan built the most powerful loyalty system in human history, not because he had the most weapons, or the most men, or the most gold. He built it because he understood, at a depth that most people never reach, what human beings actually need in order to give themselves fully to something. Merit, brotherhood, fairness, meaning. 4 things, 700 years ago, still true. The question is not whether you understand this now. The question is what you are going to do with it.